They call the chicken winners 10 through 1. Rib winners 10 through 1. No calls to think I had a shot at winning. And then they get to brisket 10, somebody else 9, somebody else 8, somebody else. And I was just like sitting there like depression was like setting in, like maybe I'm just not good. And then they call number 1 and I won first place in the brisket.
We are sitting here at Wright's Barbecue in Johnson with Jordan Wright. You've got myself, Cameron Clark, and then Nick Beyer here with NWA Founders, a voice for founders, builders, and owners that are driving growth here in Northwest Arkansas. Excited to sit down with a legend here in NWA. Mm-hmm. Jordan, tell us, kind of before we dive into anything, just a 30-second overview. What's Wright's Barbecue? What's the style of barbecue? And for those who aren't in the area, where you at?
Yeah. So we started as a food truck 8 years ago. I was at Tyson Foods and had been traveling all over the country with them doing sales, and came across Texas barbecue and was like, man, we don't have anything on this level when it comes to brisket. And, there's good barbecue places all over. And, really, I think that anytime a barbecue place goes in, it's never a negative. It's just more people are thinking barbecue. And so, we're a barbecue restaurant, family owned. We've got 4 locations, and one Johnson, Rogers, Bentonville, and Little Rock. And so we're just kind of cooking as much as we can and trying to keep the quality as best we can and keep service as great as we can. So we're more kind of a blend on barbecue. It's more of Texas brisket, more like a Kansas City style rib.
Yep.
But we're still cooking. We cook 100% indirect with wood fire every day. So we don't have any artificial smoke or propane or natural gas driving anything. So it's all wood all the time.
The slow way.
Yeah.
Excited to kind of dive in there, but so you're from Little Rock, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about growing up and when you moved up here.
Yeah.
In Northwest Arkansas.
Grew up in West Little Rock and went to CAC down there. Played sports growing up, football, basketball, soccer, and then came up here in 2004. Went to the university. Was involved with student mobilization throughout that time, and then moved actually to India for a year. Did some accent training, and then came back, got married, and then just started working. Was working various jobs in 2008, 9, 10 during the
whatever was
height
out there
of the recession, and just was in sales and working at AT&T selling cell phones. And funny story on the cell phone deal. So I was working at an authorized dealer, and they didn't have access to iPhones at the time, and so. A guy would walk in and want an iPhone, and you'd be like, they're okay. Let me tell you about the LG View.
He's like, no, I've seen the commercials.
We've also got the latest Palm Pilot. So it was wild times. But did that, and then got into restaurants. I was doing food service sales, so back of house selling for a company called PFG, and kind of that was probably the introduction. I'd always liked food, but it was never like this, oh, I'm going to be in restaurants. But once I kind of got into the PFG world, and I always liked eating, I was a bigger kid, post football. And so, but once I got kind of the behind the scenes of the restaurants, looking at menus, understanding inventory and how these guys in the back of house were ordering food, and that was just a fascinating world. And so it was funny when you went into any restaurant, my wife would be like, stop analyzing the menu, stop making suggestions for how this restaurant could be better. And it was funny because that's kind of a preamble to eventually thinking, hey, you know what, I could probably do this.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever thought we would get to where we are today. I mean, I just bought a food truck, and at first it was just going to be a little catering side job. And so, just kind of, it was more like opportunities kept opening up.
And you didn't study anything to do with that.
I didn't study anything to do with anything.
Yeah. What did you study?
I was a communications major.
Yeah.
So, I mean, family communication, TV and violence, the greats. movie was maybe movie history or whatever, film history, whatever that class was. It was, watching Charlie Chaplin. I mean, what were we doing?
Got the degree.
Yeah, no, that's right. Getting back to food, it's like working back of the house stuff. There was like a chef training that we went through, and there's a bunch of sales guys who were getting into food, being trained by chefs. I was never a chef, like a trained chef. I was a home cook. I always cooked dinner for my wife, and she did other things, but like cooking was kind of my responsibility.
Because you enjoyed it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you never had, that was your first encounter with the industry.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know, like what the barbecue standard is. Did most people like kind of work their entire lives? And I mean, like,
there's a few different avenues. It's changed the last 10 years since Franklin put Franklin Barbecue just on the map as far as putting his stuff out on YouTube and showing his methods and, kind of explaining everything he did. And everyone's like, oh, wow, all this stuff's on PBS and this is the best place apparently in the world. And he's just telling us how he cooks. And, the hard part is not how you cook. It's having the discipline to continue to do that year after year and continue to get better and buy the best product. And so the secrets are not secrets. It's funny how protective people, specifically business owners in the restaurant world, are on like, oh, that's my recipe, blah, blah, blah. It's like, man, if there's a better recipe, we're trying to find it. We're trying to create it. We're trying to look for it. If we taste something, we're like, oh man, we got to implement that. I mean, so I think there's just there's two different paths. There's the generational barbecue guy who's grown up in the business, whose dad ran one, whose grandpa opened it 80 years ago and or whatever. And they've just been passing it along down family lines. There's a lot of really great barbecue places across the country that have held that lineage. Yeah. And that's an important lineage in the culture of barbecue, is those places that they're institutions that families have been eating there for generation to generation. And it's like, this is the place, like Big Bob Gibson's in Alabama, Sam Jones in North Carolina, the Salt Lick. There's a bunch of other legendary places, Snows, and it just kind of varies as far as how people, whatever the different opportunities they have, growing up, and whether they've been inherited a barbecue deal or they were like, hey, we're into cooking, we like barbecue, we're in our 30s, we're gonna go do barbecue competitions. Now we've gotten some money because we've won Memphis in May. We've won the Jack Daniels. Yeah. Let's go open a restaurant. Surely we can do this. And the trophy stuff, there's good places that are out there that have won barbecue competitions, and then they've been successful. And, is it my favorite? No. But I'm not a big competition guy. I mean, I did a few, won some, and it's like, it's just a weekend away from your family. Yeah. So at this point, like, I'm a long way away from being like, oh yeah, let's go do some competitions. It's like our trophies are everyday customers. That's what we value. So you'll never see like we won a barbecue competition. Look at what we did in 1998 or 2016. It doesn't matter what you did 8 years ago, 7 years ago, 5 years ago. It matters what you do every day in the morning. Honestly, today's cook is already well underway. I mean, for tomorrow. So we're already looking at tomorrow. We're looking at making sure the service is great today and everything meets standards. So, but yeah, those are the two kind of routes. There's the generational, there's the barbecue restaurant guy. And then what in the last 10 years has been a lot of high-end chefs being like, hey, if I take my culinary expertise and my experience with flavors and go step into this live fire world, which has blown up. I mean, even on a high-end upscale restaurant, live fire is king. And you can go take those abilities, apply them to traditional recipes, and really elevate the cuisine. And so you see a lot of really cool stuff out there right now. So it's an exciting time to be in barbecue. I mean, across the country, probably when I started, there was maybe 25 places, 30 places that did it as good as we did. And now there's well over 100. I mean, I've got a list to put it on Twitter probably a year and a half ago, but just there's places all over the country that are just executing at a really high level, and the opportunity is endless when you do high quality food.
Yeah.
So
I think it's really like inspiring to me, like how much you care about the industry as a whole. I think that's like like back when I was at Be Unlimited and designing t-shirts, you came by and you were, let's do a t-shirt with all these other barbecue places on it. And it's like, my head, I'm like, why would you ever say that? Like, why would you?
No, it's
why
still
would
a
you
great t-shirt idea. I should do that again. I mean, it was a great idea, and honestly, I think it would probably raise some money for NIL too. Like, I could probably get it going as a good idea, because the idea was to just put all my like favorite barbecue places in the state of Arkansas on a barbecue trail map shirt for Arkansas, and then get them all to sell it, and then have them all order the shirt in and be like, that was the it kind of unofficially ran by me, but officially no one knew. Oh, they just released this shirt, and all these 10 guys received this box of shirts, and they're to sell it and go about it. So,
well, however you label it, the abundance mindset or what whatever. It's inspiring. But back to the beginning. Tell us the story of. So you were at Tyson first, right? And then how you left, why you left, and the story of kind of Wright's.
Yeah. So prior to Tyson, I was doing the food service sales. Then I got into restaurant marketing, restaurant.com. Don't go to the website. It's terrible. But the deal was good. The deal was, Groupon was out at the time. And
Groupon.
When you got Groupon deals, the restaurant got 25% of the sale, or they got 50% of the sale, but the sale was always half off. So they ended up taking home 25% of the total ticket. So if it was $100 in a Groupon, the operator got 25, Groupon got 25, and the customer got a $50 win. So what ended up happening, they all had to go in a time frame to use the Groupon. This is probably you guys didn't use many Groupons. But you'd go to the restaurant and you'd have a window time period to use the Groupon. Well, everyone would show up that last week, then 90% of your tables were all getting supreme 75% discounts. It would put tremendous inventory pressure on the restaurant. You're losing money at that because your total prime cost is 60%. Is a really good operating restaurant. So if I'm taking a 35% bath on every customer that comes in, even if I'm filling the door, I'm losing, even though I'm marketing. And they're like, oh, you're marketing, they're going to come back. Most Groupon users are deal seekers. They're not coming back, and they're not the demographic you really want to appeal to. So restaurant.com offered you bought a $25 gift card for $1. The restaurant got none of that dollar, but in order to use the 25, you had to spend over 35. So there was a minimum spend of 10 on that $35 ticket. So that's 35%. So you're at least covering your food costs. It's a 10% premium to Groupon. And so you could talk that into existence of like, hey, you did Groupon, you're doing advertising. This is just another lever, and there's not a time constraint. They'll trickle in more than they'll all just like show up with all these papers. Well, you can ask Alan Brummett this at Sassy's. I was really good at selling. And so but you get good brands on it. Guess what? They all go, oh, crap. I had Sassy's. I had Krabby's. I mean, I had some good restaurants. And so it was like, I was like the best guy in our whole little sales class. I mean, it was funny. But I covered the whole state of Arkansas and just signing up random restaurants and getting commission. Fun. So I did that. Then when the opportunity at Tyson opened up, it was an international sales job, so selling chicken leg quarters, frozen commodity chicken to international customers, Caribbean, Kazakhstan, Africa, all over. So the same group that sells chicken paws to China and all the different Asian countries that we have business with that American poultry companies export to. It's a fascinating world. So doing that. But I loved my time in food service and sales. I was like, I loved restaurants. Like I'd gotten to the point where it's like that point, like I loved restaurants and wanted to be in the food service realm, not the commodity realm, because commodities are commodities. It's a frozen chicken in a box. There's tons of interesting things about the production of chickens and everything that happens
Different
in
businesses, though.
in this realm, because there's a ton.
Yeah.
But I wanted to be on the side that was in R&D, working on the next chicken tender breading, working on the next marinade, doing, the fun. That's fun to me. Working on pepperonis and sausages for Domino's, like that's what kind of got me going. And like I would, even when I was in commodities, I would sign up for every single taste panel. They did all these taste panels at Tyson where you'd sign up and they'd bring 50 people in. It was just a free snack, really. But it was, you tasted it, you gave your feedback, your mouthfeel, your salt level, texture, all the different kind of things that you're looking for, aroma. And so when you go through that, and then I would just be down in the R&D department, probably too much. But like I just walk around and got great relationships with those guys that were working on, the plants. And I finally got an opportunity to move over to industrial food service and kind of did like a little food service sales trainee. They ended up like building a sales trainee program off of like what I did. So when I was in the commodities, I did basically an ops training because our VP, Mark Killebrew at the time, wanted all his salespeople to understand everything that had to do with the business. And such a good leadership from him, because not many of the sales groups were putting their new salespeople into the plants. And that ability to walk into the plant, understand all of the different numbers that senior level executives care about. I mean, when I started at Tyson, it was 2012. So I was 26, I had no clue back then. It's crazy to me that I thought that I knew so much. But like I didn't know anything. And so it was great to just be guided under leadership that cared that I learned. So one of Mark's proteges and guys that had come up under Mark in the business at Tyson, his name was Andy Lubert. And Andy was over in food service, and this opportunity opened up to kind of move over and do a sales trainee role over there. And so when I did that, kind of built it on a similar model of traveling with the salespeople in different roles, whether it was Jack in the Box, Domino's, Pizza Hut, Little Caesars, Chili's. Like there's so many different customers that, conferences and visits and meetings that are happening and R&D projects that are going on with all these clients, that you get that broad scope experience of sales. And then with that, you added on a bunch of experience inside the prepared plants. So all the plants that are doing fully cooked products and doing further processed stuff, and specifically pepperoni and sausage. And that world was fascinating. I spent weeks and weeks in Jefferson, Wisconsin, had a bunch of pepperoni customers. So spent a lot of time just learning how pepperoni was made and how sausage got made. And so all that stuff was great as far as building like this expertise of like
base of knowledge.
Yeah. Just kind of how does everything really happen?
Yeah.
And then, when I was in that world, I was selling a bunch of pepperoni to industrial customers that were buying the pepperoni that we would slice, or we were selling in stick form, and they would throw it in their frozen pizza conveyor belts, and boom, and we were, it's like the dough, the sauce, hitting with the cheese, the 12 pepperoni slices were going through the sticks, boom, drop the 12 pepperoni slices, and boom, and then moving on, and then they're freezing them. So it was just a crazy world. And so when I was there, one of my clients was, one of our customers was Texas Dairy Queen, which is an interesting story of restaurants. So there's International Dairy Queen, which are the Dairy Queens that we have everywhere that you see all across the country.
Yep.
And then Texas Dairy Queen is its own subset of Dairy Queen that's completely different. Like they can put a chicken fried steak on the menu. Like they have all this. It's their thing.
It's
and
Texas.
There's tons of Texas Dairy Queen locations, and it's just completely different. They have a different biscuit. They have a different breakfast sausage. So everything's different in Texas. And so when I went down to do a Texas Dairy Queen convention, me and my boss, Bob Dreiling at the time, were like, hey, let's go get barbecue, because I'd gotten a green egg and I was getting into cooking more barbecue.
And what year was this at the time?
This is like 2014.
Okay.
So 13, 14. And so went down there. We got in line at Franklin, and Franklin only been open about 4 years at the time. And the line was historically long, longer than it is today. Even though they still have big lines, they're not as long as they had been. There's just a ton of options in Austin. But we were there. I was standing in line. Bob was coming to meet me. And then all of a sudden someone walked up to me and they're like, hey, you're like 20 people back from who the last person's going to be. And it's probably going to be about 2:30. And this is like at 12:15. And I was like, okay, well, and it didn't even feel like it was that long. Like, honestly, we freaking hum at Wright's Barbecue comparatively to some of the Texas places. And so, because I was, probably 75 people back. And they're like, yeah, it's going to be, a couple hours. I'm like, okay, well, crap. So Bob shows up. I'm like, hey, I'm Googling. I'd seen this place on Food Network that had the big fire pits. And I was like, let's go to Salt Lake. So we drove about 40 minutes out. And Bob's like, where are you taking me, Mexico? And I was like, no, I mean, we'll get there. And finally, as you pull down this road to get to Dripping Springs and you pull in, you're about like a mile away from Salt Lake. They're smoking so much barbecue. I mean, like the air is just thick with post oak. Wow. And so it's like one of those ethereal experiences where you're like, this is awesome. This is what this experience should be. And this is incredible. And so we went there and then they had like, back then, this is crazy. It was like $18.99 for all you can eat. Sausage, ribs, and brisket.
Wow.
So they had these little spare ribs and, they'd cut you up a little sauce and then pickles and onions and bread. And they'd bring you beans and coleslaw. And so, that was it. And so we just sat there. I ate the sausage. Sausage was good. The ribs were okay. But the brisket, like I got a little piece of fatty brisket and was like, man, I've never eaten tender, succulent brisket like this anywhere. And at that point, I traveled all over and eaten a lot of barbecue and cooked a bunch, but I'd never dealt with, like I'd cooked a flat once and it just turned out really bad. It's like why would people eat brisket? Which is a lot of the perception that most people in Arkansas had prior to Wright's arrival into the marketplace. But so I ate that brisket and was like, wow, this is really good. And then I started kind of getting obsessed with, okay, how do I figure this out? Surely if they can do it there, and it's like, I can do it. So I just started cooking more brisket and eventually in 2015, went back down to Texas. We were going to Baton Rouge for the LSU Arkansas game, and which we won. And we flew into Houston, ate at a place called Killen's Barbecue in Pearland. Ronnie Killen is a legendary chef in Houston. And he had started Killen's Barbecue kind of off this. There was this trend happening in this marketplace in Texas that was like, hey, all these places are popping up, like a lot of them, and they're all really good. Like there was Gatlin's, there's Pit Room, there was Killen's, there's back in 15, who else was there? And then you had Franklin over there. Truth Barbecue kind of popped up in Brenham.
Oh, yeah.
And so you had all these places it was just becoming this kind of cultural movement in Texas of high quality classic barbecue because they've had a barbecue tradition. It's just always been brisket, ribs, sausage. They were a lot of German and Czech immigrants that made a lot of great sausage, and they had the beef industry, but they cooked a lot of shoulder clod. All the meat markets kind of had this smoked beef program for all their cheap cuts, and that's what kind of built Texas's barbecue identity and the lexicon of who's doing what. And Carolina with whole hog, and they're a hog farming culture. Texas is beef, and so that's where kind of, if you look at the farming, and that's where their barbecue kind of influences come from, and then sauces kind of go off from that, right? But so we're down there and eating at Killen's, eat a beef rib for the first time. Get cafeteria style service at Killen's for the first, and my buddy Scott was like, man, a place like this would kill it in Northwest Arkansas. And, kind of was like, yeah, I think it would, you're not wrong. It's delicious.
Yeah.
And there was another place, I think it was called Buck Naked Barbecue. It opened back in like 2010, but they were a Texas style place that tried to open basically way too early in the market. But after going to Killen's and kind of just chewing on it, that was the fall of 15. I started kind of looking at different smokers. Okay, what kind of smokers are these guys using? Okay, they're using indirect cooking. There's reverse flow. There's pure indirect like we use, but reverse flow, you have firebox, a heat plate, and then the chimney's on the same side of the firebox. And the way it works is that's fire in the heat The heat moves under the heat plate, comes back around the heat plate, and then out the chimney. So
Is that a green egg or that's
no, that's a reverse flow.
Okay.
So there's not a home reverse flow unless you buy a custom smoker that's built like that.
So at the time, were people YouTubing this?
Yeah. There's a lot on YouTube. I mean, Franklin's PBS series was on YouTube.
So that had already started. That had
already been going on. Okay. So Franklin's series was on YouTube. So it was just, kind of watch a YouTube video, cook. And so I got in touch with this East Texas smoker company and started talking about building a catering truck, and it was just a one smoker, and it was on a trailer. It was like $7,500. And I'm, at Tyson, I'm ordering this deal. I'm about to turn 30, and Scott was like, "Hey, you should come cook for my construction company's like barbecue competition. That's called the Association of General Contractors Barbecue Cook-Off in Houston."
Okay.
And it's a big event. They had 200, team members show up, and so I had to cook dinner for them. And there's all these plans. And then there was a barbecue competition the next day. So while we're doing that, he found a pit, and it was really crappy. And I was like, I did not want to cook on that. I had kind of done a few different small caterings for friends and churches, and just been like, hey, let me help out. We're doing a deal when New Life was starting. We were doing a leaders meeting, and so I was like, I'll cook. Let me cook, so we don't have to buy the barbecue. You just buy all the ingredients. So kind of you got to use that as like a test to be like, okay, what would this meal cost? Mm-hmm. $15 a person. Okay, great. Y'all go buy the stuff, and then I'll pick it. We'll go together. I'll just take all the ingredients, cook it, and then bring it and serve the food. So we did that, and it was like, oh man, the financial side makes sense if you do it right. Like, why do restaurants fail? And so start doing that, and kind of my buddy was another friend while I was doing the catering ideas, like bringing this truck in to just cook and do tailgates and stuff. He goes, man, the farmer's market in Fayetteville sucks. He's like, y'all need to, the vegetables are great, the farm market, but the food offerings sting. So he said, hey, why don't you just convert that to a food truck and get on the farmer's market? And I was like, man, I hadn't thought about that.
And was this before the competition or after the competition?
This is before the competition.
Okay.
So he was like, man, you should do that. Because I'd brought pork to company events and ribs and cooked, and everyone's like, man, your barbecue's so good. And
this is just you.
There's just me. There's no one else. And so, and Mark King is the guy's name. And Mark? Yeah. Mark's great. Yeah. And so Mark was like, man, you should just try to get in the farmer's market or something. We're just talking.
Yeah.
I was like, that's not a bad idea. So anyways, the next day, I emailed the farmer's market people, told them what I was interested in doing. Like, yep, you give us a design of the food truck layout. It's got to meet. And I was like, oh, health standards. Oh, okay. And what is that? Department of Health? I was like, okay. I guess I'll figure out how I need to design this. So then we designed the first trailer, which is a tiny little kitchen with a hand wash sink. And then it had electrical to hold a warmer. And then it had the smoker, and it had a little propane fryer and a propane range to cook sides on. Funny story, I've never used the fryer. There's an 8-year-old fryer that's perfectly able to weld off of that thing if somebody wants it.
And how much was that first truck, Jordan?
So that was $17,000.
Okay.
Something like that. So I borrowed half of it from my dad, and then borrowed the other half from my 401k, and then paid my dad back basically 6 months in after doing the farmers market events. But drive down, pick up my smoker, go hang out with a friend who's now been, an 8-year friend named Evan Leroy. He runs Leroy and Lewis in Austin. Hung out with Austin for 8 hours he was at Friedman's at the time. It's now closed. But he was at Friedman's, and there he was making his own bread, making his own sauce, trimming everything. And so I got to trim, and I'd been practicing trimming, but I wasn't good. I hadn't gotten really good at it.
What is trimming?
Trimming briskets, trimming ribs, just doing all the prep work. Yeah. And so the key to great operations is prep and preparing and having everything in set. So mise en place, having everything set for service.
Yeah.
So you don't just sit there and say, oh, I got to cook ribs this morning. Let me get all the ribs trimmed.
Yeah.
And that's what I'd been doing And even when I was, starting the food truck, there were times when I had no time to prep, and I just had to prep. As soon as I got the fire started, I started my prep, got the fire going, got everything on. So I spent some time with Evan, took the food truck, never been cooked on. I put one fire through it the night at the hotel, the night I picked it up. The next day I cooked pork for we did like pork tacos and did kind of like a fiesta night. And then the next day I've got this brand new pit and this guy behind us is like, you ain't winning with that thing. No one's ever winning anything with a pit that's never been cooked on. And I was like, oh, okay. All right. Well, we ended up getting through that day and I was so tired. I'd stayed up pretty much for 48 hours. And
this is in Houston.
For this deal.
Yeah.
So I'd stayed up the night before the dinner cooking pulled pork. And then that night that I stayed for the pulled pork night, huge storm. So I built this thing. I brought a cot because I was like, I'll just sleep on the weather was good. I'll just sleep in that little room. Well, then the cot didn't fit in the little room. So I was like right next to the smoker and I laid down on the cot. Literally like an hour later, this huge storm comes in and it's like insane. So I fold up the cot, leave, get in the truck, go to the hotel. I've got all the pork on and I just had the fire. I put a couple more logs in the fire and then left. And so I went to the hotel where my buddy had a room and slept, woke up, come back. I was the first one back there because no one was doing what I was doing. And there's these big canopy tents are just ripped up and flipped over, and because there was so much wind and the storm was so bad. So I'm really glad I didn't get impaled because it could have been bad. And so I did that. I'm struggling on sleep. The next day we do the barbecue competition, we cook everything, turn it in. And then while we're waiting on the results, they call the chicken winners 10 through 1, and then they get to the rib winner 10 through 1, no calls. And I was sitting there just exhausted, flat out, just like, what in the world have I just done this weekend? This is so stupid. And to think I had a shot at winning some of this stuff, because it would have been nice. It would have been nice to get a win. And then they get to brisket, 10, somebody else, 9, somebody else, 8, somebody else. And I was just sitting there, depression was setting in, maybe I'm just not good. And I need to probably not do this. Because you're just exhausted. You don't even think clear. And then they call number 1, and I won first place in the brisket. And so it was there was no more everyone was going nuts. We were having such a blast. And so then we drove back. A week later, we do the first Thursday event. There was a massive line. And man, just the way Instagram worked back then was just different than it is today. It's so much harder to get an organic following today than it was. Mm-hmm. And so I just kind of been posting stuff and
this is on your personal account or Wright's barbecue? Okay.
Yeah. So got a logo design that spring and this one. Mm-hmm. And then I started just posting, hey, we're going to be here. We're going to do this. And then I was like, hey, first Thursday, I had a little buddy make a little graphic. And man, that first day we were sold out in an hour and a half. Our line was so long that first day. I had no idea what I was doing. I had this big cutting board. I had a whole pile of meat. I probably could have sold so much more barbecue if I would have actually known what I was doing on the cut board. But that was a huge night. Friends of mine, Ben Cash and Matt Hartness, helped me, and they were just so nice. And Amber was there, and it was they were just volunteering just to be around it. They were so intrigued that I was doing this, and sold all the barbecue. None of the other food trucks were busy, and then started farmers markets, doing the grind of doing breakfast burritos, tacos, and just cooking breakfast. And then I would do plates and started bringing mac and cheese and beans, and added a couple people to help serve so that I could then cook sides, bring them back. People that could drop off the truck too, and they could kind of take over a little bit from there, and then I could kind of do some other things, get things organized. So yeah, once we got to that point, end of 16, it was all right, we don't have a ton of catering business. We've been trying to build it. Still at Tyson full time. So all this extra stuff was just on the weekends or on a first Thursday in the summer, where I had a buddy of mine, John Greasy, who was a teacher, and so he was off. And so I would wake up early in the morning on Thursday, get everything on the cooker, and John would show up at 7:30. I would go to work, and then he would then just run the fire. And then I'd come back at lunch, put on ribs, tell him what to do. And then by the time we got to dinner, by the time we got to the point where he would go drive it to First Thursday, everything would be done.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd just be, we'd be there ready to serve. And I'd leave work, go right to the First Thursday and go. So it was a lot of hours outside of Tyson and maybe some, but, just kind of working on that and trying to figure out how to actually launch. So, you're reading a lot of books and learning a lot of, okay, what do founders do? What do owners do? What do people do? It's like, I need a SWOT analysis. It's like, And so, but wrote a vision plan, and it's funny. I mean, the vision plan from 16 has, we've beaten every single thing I wrote or thought I could do in 2016. We did pretty much 5 years ahead of schedule. So
wow.
It's just been crazy. So in 2017, I'd had my third child. We had started doing more events. We started in the Johnson yard over here in the spring of 17, just doing lunches on Fridays before farmers market opened. Because I was like, man, I need to do stuff kind of more. I need more. Everything I was reading was like, do more activities. Even if you don't want to do them, do the activity.
And at this point, does Amber think you're crazy, or does it really feel like there's a business, there's momentum here?
There was definitely a lot of business, a lot of momentum. I mean, she didn't think I was crazy. I think really there was times where I was like, I probably should just focus on the job. I was trying to get another job at Tyson, like trying to get a promotion, and those just kept, for whatever reason, I feel like I was very qualified or overqualified for a position, just didn't get it.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, well, that didn't work out. Oh, I have a great relationship with this VP and I'm perfectly qualified for this job. And nope, sorry, we're going to go this direction. So anyways, kind of those stiff arms were kind of like, all right, well, and I was really doing a great job in my role. It was just it was still industrial, and I wanted to get into food service and do the things I wanted to do. And so in about June of 17, I had gotten this big job for Reynolds wraps, like foil. Yep. And so I got in this big 3-day job at whatever the place is up on the hill.
Pratt Place.
Pratt Place.
Yeah, Pratt Place.
So we had this like 3-day event there.
Yeah.
And I got the job. I bid on it, like it was breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Wow.
And so 3 meals and like 2 snacks a day. So it was like this full deal. And I was like, I got this job. It was like $25,000 job. And so I had all this catering, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to have to take vacation to be able to execute that. So I turned in my 2 weeks notice. My boss was like, don't do that. Please, like, we need you, like, you don't want to do that. And I was like, okay, well, then he goes, I'm just going to ignore it for now. And I was like, well, I need this time. He's like, take the time. So anyways, fast forward a little bit longer. We go to another First Thursday. We're set up for another First Thursday. I'd probably spend $600. And at this time, capital's limited. And so I'd probably spend $600 on all the food. And I'm driving to First Thursday, and this huge storm just goes like in and out in like 2 minutes. Well, then they call, my guys were up there set up, and they're like, hey, they canceled First Thursday. It's like, why? The storm's gone. They're like, yeah, they shut it down. They're not going to do it. So anyways, I've got my food truck there. Well, the other food truck guys start packing up and they leave. And I told my guys, like, hey, I can't pay you. Like, we don't have any business. And so, but I'm going to sit here and see who still shows up to walk the square and just sell whatever I can. And so I posted on Instagram, story, and it was like, hey, I'm here and, selling barbecue. They canceled the event, but if you're out or if you need some barbecue, come on, I'll make you a deal. And people person after person, Kim Vollendorf showed up. The Billings showed up. It's like all these great people. And then it was during the Walmart shareholders meeting. So all this whole group from Walmart China shows up.
Wow.
And like 30 people show up and they're like, oh yes. And so they bought barbecue and I was just selling whatever. I was like making deals and just selling barbecue. And I ended up, getting most of my money back, if not all of the deal. And it was just a positive, because I ended up crying, like on the way to it, I was like crying, talking to my dad. I was like, this is so stupid. How could I risk quitting my job for this thing that could, based on weather, you have no money. And so the next day I walk into Tyson and talk to my boss, and and he was in town from Chicago, and I was like, hey, I think I'm going to stay. It's like, I want to stay. And so he's like, great. That's awesome. So I'm like, okay, great. Awesome. I talked to my other VP, the Andy, the guy, and he was like, I was like, it's just too much of a risk. He's like, I think that's wise. It's like, yeah, it probably is. It probably was. And so that afternoon, I was coming back to the office from lunch, and I get a call from Chad, and Chad's like, hey, so about staying, we're about to go through a reorg, and because you'd already sent your 2 weeks notice, like Donnie, my VP, and I love Donnie's he's a great friend still, like we already used that to be like, we're cutting this, like we don't have this position, so you don't have to worry about telling us to cut. Like we already have someone departing. And so it's really not there. It's like, but we can think that I can now help you. And I was like, so you know what? And then I was like, okay, well, I hung up, and I was like, well, there's kind of like the last kind of really thread of like, all right, well, I guess got to go all in and just go do it. At that point, I had 2 food trucks. So I was doing multiple.
This is late 17?
Mid 17.
Mid 17. Okay.
And so I had two food trucks. So I was driving. I was cooking all at Joyce and Crossover, and then I was leaving a team there, and then I was meeting a team in Rogers with the truck and the other trailer out at Miss Hunt's big building, the first big tower out there. And so I set out that parking lot and selling in Fayetteville, and I was doing that Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then about that same time, this building, there was an antique company that went out, and I took over. And even before I left Tyson, I'd decided, I was leaving and I needed cash, so I'd cashed in my 401k. I'd gone to the bank and gotten some money to get this thing leased, because this is about all at the same time.
And you just saw this, or did you have a buddy reach out and say, hey, this spot's coming open?
So I had looked at it before it ever got leased by the antique people back in 2016, but I was like, dude, I don't know how to run a restaurant.
And why Johnson? I know you were doing the stuff over here in the yard.
It was close to Tyson.
Okay.
And I was on the way, and I drove up drove up Greg and turned right on Main Drive and left on Elmore to get to work every day.
Yeah.
And this little old building used to be Mordor's Pizza. It used to be a bunch of different things. But it's just it looks like a barbecue joint. Yeah. And so, so I first looked at it after it was Golden Kolache. And the Golden Kolache people, it was like yellow and red inside, but it looked cool. And my buddy from Texas was like, yeah, I like it, man. It's great. You should do it. And I was like, yeah, but it's it's $850 a month, and that's a lot. I was like, man, that's just, I don't know, if it goes bad, I don't want to be on the hook for $850 a month for 5 more years. And it was just so funny. You can't rent anything for $800 a month.
Can't rent an apartment
for $800 a month. And so, I would say this to any entrepreneur: if you have an idea and someone says, hey, you can rent this place for less than $1,000 a month to have a retail business in a retail environment that's approved, you do it, because it's like you won't lose. You won't lose. It's undefeated strategy. And so got this building underway. Simmons Bank helped us on that deal, and we still bank with them, and we've got a great relationship. And so we started remodeling this, and then in the fall of 17, we opened.
Fall of 17.
Yeah, okay. October 17.
Okay.
So we just kept doing food trucks, and then once we kind of started doing the remodel stuff here, kind of getting it all cleaned up and getting it painted, and we were running probably, I think we were running like Wednesday to Saturday here, and then going to do the farmer's market, and then coming back here. Okay. And we, with our second truck, we kind of just settled in, and then we still were doing the farmer's market that fall till it was over. So yeah, that's kind of how we got to Johnson.
So inception 16, you're running a food truck. You kind of branch off, do a couple for food trucks. You leave your job full time and you're all in. And that's kind of mid to late 17. And then you open here, late 17.
Yep.
And how long into when you open? I know you said you could feel the momentum with the food trucks. You could maybe even see the financial piece. Okay, like this business is going to work. But now you're on the hook for a building. You've had some TI, or you've done some stuff in this building. how soon after you're in here are you like confident this business is going to work?
Oh, I was confident before we took over the building.
Okay.
I mean, we were doing 3x what any other food truck was doing at any event we ever did.
Okay.
And so, I was walking away with $3,500, at a food truck event. And everybody else was barely scraping $1,000 in sales. And I was crushing. And then we were crushing here. Like when we
As soon as you opened.
Well, I'm saying when we got the food truck set on site, like we started seeing weekly increments of, hey, the Wednesday number's bigger, the Thursday number's bigger, cook more. We ordered a 1,000-gallon tank for the October launch, and as soon as we opened, we ordered another one that day. And it came in the spring of 18. But it's like we were at a massive line day one, did a huge lunch, and it was like $2,600 lunch, that was like most of our full days, at an event was 2,500, 3,000. I mean, it was a great day.
Did anyone try to talk you out of this location?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, because just being a real estate guy, it's like,
well, I'll tell you what, real estate guys are right. They're not wrong. Like there's certain things that make sense to operate retail restaurants.
Yeah.
I mean, I think daily traffic count doesn't matter. I think households matter more than anything. If I was going to say what's a driving factor, and also other offerings when people are going into an area to seek a service, this is a service area. The more people are coming in looking for food, here are your 12 options, and you've got a lot more chance to bring in people. But like here, I mean, this was a great value. And I mean, Tom Allen was the only real estate guy in the area that said, absolutely, without a doubt, don't hesitate, take that deal, and don't go spend, $15,000 a month on a new restaurant. Like you're just like, that is a barbecue joint. It is a great deal. Go do that. And so, yeah, everyone else is like, what the heck are you doing? Like, build over here, do this. Like, there's lots better buildings out there. And, we've always said it's not about the building. It's about what we do and what we put into it and how we make people feel. And the food will bring people. And it did.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, because I first came to Wright's, it was senior year of college, 2018. We used to come, I tell this story to a lot of people. We used to come in the evenings. We'd miss the burn ends. They were gone. But we'd get here at like 7 and we'd get whatever's left. We'd hang out. I can't remember if this back room was here. It was here. We'd hang out. I mean, it's probably like 10 guys from the fraternity house. We all lived in the fraternity house. We drive over. And at the end of the night, on our way out, your staff would say, hey, we've got these leftover sides. Do you want to take them with you?
Yeah.
Because you weren't using them the next day. And so, yeah, the quality from the very get-go, everybody says they focus on quality. But then you look at stuff like that. I mean, that doesn't make sense financially. Why would you not reuse the sides from the day before? So talk to us about the strategy there and maybe some things you put in place from the onset that have made Wright's what it is today.
I mean, a lot of it is just, what do you want? What do you want to eat? What would you do if you were me? You wouldn't want to buy frozen food and go or buy pre-cooked barbecue. I mean, there's lots of options you could do to run a restaurant. And so we just thought, what makes me the happiest to be able to feel confident to serve people. And so, it was never about obviously it was like, I want to pay for my family's bills. I want to not go broke. And so, but it was like, I just felt like every great brand out there, they don't think about, what they spend on certain things. It's like, charge what you need to charge to make it an incredible item. So like Rolls-Royce, doesn't think about the cost of manufacturing their product. They're not trying to save their way to prosperity.
Yeah.
They'll make a car and they'll sell it for $1 million, and it's a car. And so your identity as a brand is directly driven to what quality you're bringing to the table and what experience you're bringing to the table. So that's been it. It's really creating an experience, creating a world-class barbecue destination, which we've done. And that's been the goal since day one, which is, be best in class, be a place that people come to Arkansas and they think Wright's barbecue. So our state didn't have a barbecue identity really. I mean, we did. I mean, we've got Delta, we've got a little mixed Kansas City, but we're in a great spot to have a great barbecue identity. We've got Texas, we've got Kansas City, we've got Memphis. We're in the Bermuda Triangle of barbecue, in my opinion. And so that means we can do whatever we want. If I wanted dry rub ribs, I would do it. I don't like them. So I do the ribs I like, and people like them. So some people like dry rub ribs. I think those people live in Memphis. So they don't live here. And yeah, some people are like, oh, I really love Memphis ribs. And then you're like, yeah, go eat them and then come back here and eat our ribs. And you're like, oh yeah, they're right. These ribs are really good. So, I think us doing what we did when we did it opened the pathway for a lot of places to get up and going and being like, hey, this can be done in Arkansas. Ridgewood Brothers in Russellville, Nightfire and Searcy, those are two Reeds in Booneville, and they were open. I don't know when Reeds opened, but they opened maybe similar timing, I feel like. But again, following those trends and seeing that, like, there's better barbecue in the state of Arkansas than there ever has been. Ray's Rump Shack, Seth Simmons is a former pitmaster here. He's now in Jonesboro, outside Jonesboro area. And like, to me, the fact that we have 6 places that really could compete with anybody else in any other state, that's a lot of great barbecue spots for the size of state we have. And so it's been a really cool experience seeing that, you can do something, but it's really no different, I feel like, than outside of it being something cool like barbecue. But like when back when we were kids, when I was a kid, you go to New York, eat New York style pizza, and someone brings a New York style pizza place, or they go to, Chicago and eat this place, and they're like, let's bring this restaurant to our market. And so, that's how restaurants, that's how the food culture spreads. Somebody travels, somebody has an experience. How'd that make them feel? Let's bring it back to my community. Hey, there's this great fajita place in Texas I went to. Now we have local lime. It's like, or whatever. Yeah. And so it's you can trace culinary, pathways to just travel and experiences that you've had. It's like, yeah, you had great restaurants. Like, you'd love to have some of those restaurants here.
Oh yeah, 100%. So going back to the business now, you've got this spot open in Johnson, and at what point is expansion conversation happening? Is that a year in? Is that 2 years in?
No, I mean my first plan, like the first vision statement was within 5 years of buying the food truck. Open the first location.
Yeah.
So I was like way ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
Let me pull this up. But it's
your old vision statement?
Yeah.
Oh, heck yeah.
Well, and it was going to be called JW Smokehouse too.
Okay.
So yeah, to provide Northwest Arkansas with one of the best food experiences they can find, not only in the state, but in the country. We will capitalize on the growing demand for locally owned businesses. Our aim is to differentiate ourselves from typical Arkansas barbecue by remaining somewhat small seating area, operate lunch only until we were out of food, similar to Franklin. We gave up on that real fast because that's dumb. And people need to eat dinner, and you need to have a staff. And so all that, it's like, unless you're Franklin or a place that can churn out a great lunch every day. So,
and you used to do breakfast, by the way, because
we did breakfast on Saturdays.
I don't know if it was a brisket biscuit or something. I'll never forget it. But
returning soon, hopefully.
Okay.
To a breakfast location. That'd be great. But it's like our mission is to be best in class, both food quality and unrivaled customer service. It's a fast casual barbecue restaurant specializing in brisket, highly acclaimed for our house-made sausages. The business is currently being run on a mobile unit. I'm seeking financing for brick and mortar. Competition, Whole Hog, Sassy's, Penguinets, Dickies. That was the competition.
Yeah.
It is. It's so funny. Market gaps, life-changing meat experiences, brisket quality, the customer service, involved ownership. menu: brisket, pork, turkey, ribs, sausage, sandwiches, the Pumbaa, a brisket sandwich, so sides, baked beans, potato salad, and Chipotle slaw, which I started with. Strengths: food, quality, experience. These will be the foundation of our brand: network of friends, family, coworkers, social media reach, drive for success, categories trending upward in popularity. Weaknesses: lack of restaurant experience. Barbecue customers are traditionally loyal.
Yeah.
Opportunities: Arkansas has no risk of reputation. Most brisket is not done well. There's been little innovation on the barbecue sandwich front. We will capitalize on growing demand for fast casual handheld protein sandwiches. There's also a need in this area for a lunch barbecue destination that causes people to have to try to get there. Threats: low barrier of entry to new competition. We must be first to market. And that was one of Amber's points whenever I was thinking about staying at Tyson. She was like, if you wake up 10 years from now, and it's almost 10 years, it's 8 now. Wow. So if you wait 10 years, you wake up 10 years and you're still at Tyson, someone else will have opened what you want to open. And you're going to sit there and say, man, that's another idea I had and I didn't do it. And so it's one of those things I'd encourage any entrepreneur. It's like, if you have the idea, there is absolutely nothing but yourself and your self-doubt and the fear that's holding you back from accomplishing something that you believe in. And if you don't believe in yourself, you deserve not to accomplish that thing. So you can never look back and say, oh, I could have done that. No, you couldn't have, because you didn't. And so that's really the fact. It's like, oh, I could have made the major leagues if I would only played baseball every day and hit curveballs. It's like, well, yeah, but you didn't. Right. So I get that was your dream, but did you really have the commitment, the conviction to go follow that dream? Because a lot of those guys that make major leagues are not the number one draft picks. Yeah. A lot of them are journeymen that continue to work and make no money, but they love what they're doing, and they put it in. So yeah, I mean it's really good. It's kind of wild.
So going back to the business, at how far in were you? And the next location was it Bentonville, Jordan?
No, so. The next location was Bentonville, but that was during COVID. And so we really did that out of necessity. We were remodeling this. The Bentonville spot, the guy really wanted me to go in. It had a kitchen, and we could get it health department approved quickly. And so we got that up and going to cook sides for Johnson. And so it wasn't even open for a while. It was just a secondary kitchen we were renting while we were constructing this kitchen. And then we borrowed a food truck from Brightwater to do some side prep here. And then we ran our old food truck. And then we bought an Airstream to do dishes in. We had this wild scenario during COVID. It was so crazy. And then we're running the drive-thru. So the kitchen was closed down. Smokehouse was running. And we were just walking everything into this room. This room had prep tables and a drive-thru window over there. And we had a cut line here with tickets all on the wall. And we were just taking online orders. And that was 2020. It was crazy. Built the drive-thru, opened Bentonville, and we're like, you know what? Let's do once seating kind of opened back up, and then people were back into restaurants walking around. We decided to open Bentonville. Still kept no inside seating for a while. It was just pick up and to go, and so ran that.
And from a finance perspective, at that point, are you feeling some of the tailwinds from the business, or are you still?
The economy was awesome,
right? Well,
no.
I'm just saying, at one point you were borrowing from your 401k. So when did you really start to feel like you were probably whatever you were making money, you're putting it back into the business to open up Bentonville?
Not necessarily. I mean, Bentonville is more of a let's sign a lease and so we can keep servicing the drive-thru and because we were making money in the drive-thru a little bit. And, we made money from day one here. First day we were open. So we've had months that sucked. I mean, everybody has a January and July, it's like there's months that are slower. But it's like from the moment we opened, it was impossible for me to consider an outcome of of running a losing proposition. And so our financials were terrible back then, but I had a part-time guy just doing it it's my brother-in-law, he's not my CFO. And it's like, but he was doing it. He had another job, so he was just kind of keeping up with the generic expense lines. And it was like, I'd be like, yeah, we have money. And then I'd be like, I'd pull out money. And then be like, oh, crap, we don't have money. And then I'd pull money back, But we were able to save up and buy this place in 2019. But you have an $800 monthly mortgage and you're doing real restaurant numbers, it's easy to save.
Yeah.
So there's two options in, restaurants and businesses in general. It's like, okay, how do you build equity, right? You build equity by buying things, or you build equity by operating under a competitive lease and build liquidity faster, and you've got cash. And so you've got two choices. This was definitely an option where we didn't have the chance to buy it. The family didn't want to sell it in 17, and I couldn't have bought it then, really.
Right.
But, we were able to stack cash because our occupancy number for rent costs was so low. And so then we just kind of kept following that. Like, okay, if we can, Bentonville's occupancy cost is really low to the, relative to the sales we do. And so we can put more into our food. My food cost can be a little higher. That's just what it's going to be. So you can only drive your food costs so low when you're buying premium ingredients. Right. So then when we decided to open Bentonville, it was like, yeah, we could use a second store. It's nice to not, what we learned is it's nice to not be dependent on one stream, right? Like if something happens to Johnson has to close down, the power goes out. There's a tornado. There's roads down. Yeah. There's construction today. The sales are down. Okay, well, crap. Having two open helps that. And so it was 2021. We were looking at going to Little Rock. Weren't even thinking about really anything other than the two locations we had. I'm pretty sure spring of 21, I got really sick. I got COVID for like 13, 14 days, bedridden, had to get the plasma stuff. And so, felt like death for 2 weeks and came out of it. And when you come out of an experience like that, you kind of are just like euphoric and like, oh, what's the world look like? What can we do? Let's open Junior's, my breakfast concept. And so it's like, I signed a lease across the street, and that 4 years later, still not a Junior's, but we're using it as an office. And then we decided, okay, in late 21, kind of after that was like, hey, we're not going to do that there. It makes no sense. Let's look. And a friend of mine, TJ Leffler, had been like, hey, we've got this spot. We're opening these apartments, Pinnacle Heights, I think. Yeah. And so there was an opportunity there when we got the pricing back for this 1,500 square foot spot, and it was $500,000 to remodel it for something I don't own. And I was like, yeah, we're out. And we'd already signed the lease. But it was like that we couldn't come to an agreement on like who was going to bear the brunt of the cost because the contractor had screwed up a few of the MEPs. And it's mechanical, electrical, plumbing.
Yeah.
For all those who don't know what MEP stands for. So they had screwed up on a few things. And during that time, McLard's was going out of business. They were struggling. And Tom connected me with Gus Blass, who was part of that ownership group. We sat down. He was like, we got to get out of this space. And it used to be Pinnacle Bar and Grill. We looked at going in there in 2020 or 20. It was like late 2019, early 2020, pre-COVID. Tom had showed us, or maybe it was post-COVID because Scott had left, the guy who used to own Theo's and PBG. Yeah. And so when they had closed down, like we had looked at it, and
that's a big space for those who haven't been there.
It's not that big,
but
it's bigger than here.
Yeah.
But it felt like it was massive whenever we were looking at it. We're like, oh, this is massive. And the patio's big, but inside's really not that big. Yeah. But to us, it was like, that's a big risk. We're going right next to Walk-Ons and Chewy's and Chick-fil-A and Torchy's. And like, man, if we go in and fail, then it's like, oh, we just failed big and now we owe. And that could jeopardize our whole business. Fast forward to whenever McLard's went in and then they failed, it was like, well, they failed too. It's like, shoot, like, I mean, and they had a lot of operational issues. I'll leave it at that. But whenever that opportunity came back up, we were like, hey, we were looking at doing this Junior's here in Rogers. We can open a Wright's for a good lease agreement with people we trust and know. And we got the TI, they got all the stuff figured out and opened, and that business is crushing.
And that's 21.
That's Jordan? 22.
22. Okay.
That it took about we were looking at going to Little Rock. So we were in conversations about buying the spot we have in Little Rock during the time in like early 22 that we ended up looking at it. And then all of a sudden we're looking at Little Rock. We're trying to make an offer. It's not like they're not budging on the price. And so, but then all of a sudden, like in the middle of trying to open Little Rock, we're like, oh, hey, here's Rogers. And then we open up Rogers. Maybe like a month after we opened Rogers, we closed a month before we closed our loan on Little Rock somehow. It was crazy. It was like
Great rate.
Well, there's really bad quotes that we were getting from builders on the plan. So we were just trying to like get these prices down to where it made sense. And all in all, we learned a lot of lessons, but got that thing done at like, I think 4.9. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
Would not be a feasible deal a week after we closed.
Right.
Simmons did an unbelievable job for us. And so, yeah, I mean, that business is not feasible at 7, 8. It's just not. And so we got that done and then spent the next year arguing with builders and changing plans and building out that spot. And we opened that fall of last year. It's crushing.
It's awesome.
And so it feels like, I mean, just outside looking in, is Rogers the one most volume? Are you doing the most volume at Rogers?
Rogers 1 and Little Rock's 2 right behind
wow.
those are the biggest spots. But every business is making money.
Yeah.
And they're all different in their own way. We're about to remodel Johnson. We got to do a parking lot. We're going to expand dining. And I think that will help. I mean, there's times where I know even my closest friends are like, if I know I can't sit inside, especially winter days, hot days in the summer, you're not going to go wait in line to then go sit and sweat or go sit and freeze. And so once we expand the dining here and then we get the parking fixed, it's like, there's going to be more parking spaces and be like, oh, there's a space to park. And when there's no space to park here, you don't come.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like trying to get anywhere. It's like, oh, there's nowhere to park. I guess I'll drive on to the medium. And so credit to Johnson City. I mean, as far as credit to these other culinarians that have opened up in Johnson, it's been really fun watching them. I wouldn't say piggyback off of us, but like it's really, I guess, trampolined off of us. Like, oh, hey, look what Wrights was able to do. Hey, this is really North Fayetteville.
Yeah.
So.
Well, but it wasn't when you came in though. It was like,
oh, not at all. It was like this separate thing.
And I think what really blows my mind is like, there's people that, I mean, yeah, you call it piggyback, or there's people like that bring the culture, bring the vibe, and it was like put the stake in the ground. Yeah, and I mean, that's what you did. Yeah, just like planted the flag.
Yeah, we definitely proved that you can be in business here.
Yeah. I mean, for like you're saying, barbecue in Arkansas, planting the flag, like
first move
happening.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I had a dream that whenever we opened our Little Rock store, and this is back when Game of Thrones was big, of doing a Game of Thrones like and then like the Johnson building coming out of there and like and then like the Little Rock building growing out of the ground, so like taking over these kingdoms and territories. And it was going to be an epic. And then like now it's like I could probably do it through AI for pretty cheap, but like it wouldn't hit as much as it would have hit like 8 years ago.
Yeah.
But I always thought Little Rock was going to be our second location. That was my hometown, and I always wanted to go back there. And I'm so thankful that it wasn't our second, because by the time we got to 4, like getting those other 2 off the ground and getting more leadership, getting a better business built, we probably would have failed if like after 2 years we'd have been like, let's go open Little Rock. I had no infrastructure to do that. And so it's probably another business thing I tell anybody is like, don't go so fast that you don't build a great company. And the reason we're successful today is we have the best company. I mean, hands down. We have great leadership. We have great people, and we have operational plans and training. And I mean, look at Little Rock as an example. We walked into Little Rock. Week 1, we're doing, $100,000 weeks, $90,000 weeks. And it's like, those are massive weeks for 5 days a week. So, but we were able to succeed because we had great infrastructure, great oversight, great culture, and we've got great people. And so we do a really good job hiring people that are cool, that like to hang out, that love to work and work with food and care about people.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone always asks, they're like, man, why, what makes it Wright so special? What makes it? You and Chick-fil-A, what makes it? What do you think it is? And you're like, well, the answer. I mean, the answer is we don't settle on bad people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I can't say anything other than that. It's like, if you're not good with people, you're not going to survive. You don't hold up the standard. Mm-hmm. So that's the biggest key we have is we set a standard. We have a culture. Those values are important to us.
So good.
If you don't match those, there's just other places for you to pursue excellence. Like our GM here, I mean, he was in the sheriff's department. He was a military guy in the Army. And then he was at Mercedes doing sales. And he started here at $12 an hour. And like one of the guys didn't want to hire him. And he'll tell you today, he's like, oh, that was a mistake. I was wrong. Because he's an incredible guy. He loves people. He loves food. And, he's been a great leader for us. But he had no restaurant experience. Mm-hmm. But it just shows you, I mean, you just have to be able to pick really good people. And any of the books you read, I mean, they're going to tell you the same things that you already know. Like, oh, maybe we need a consultant. All you're really doing is paying someone to tell you what you already know you should do. Yeah. You just want someone to tell you. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes that makes sense. And sometimes you don't know what to do and you really do need to hire somebody to consult. And that would be a good consultant. But like,
a lot of times the accountability.
Yeah.
Just like someone saying, hey.
Someone saying, dude, I'm telling you to do all
Here
this.
You go.
Do it.
And you're paying me to tell you to do it. So you better do it.
And you already knew all these suggestions were the things you need to do because you're not an idiot. So I just think it's funny. Like, you've got to always be analyzing your business like you're trying to consult it and help it grow and help your people and help your people get. Building a structure of leadership is important because it helps people see a future. Yeah. It helps them see a career. Yeah. We've got long-term employees here that are awesome. And
I remember when y'all opened the Rogers store, faces that I saw in 2018 here were up there, and I think up there now.
Yeah, for sure.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah. How many employees do you have now?
It's a great question. It's like 140.
Okay. Yeah.
Something like that.
And then just from a scale, we always talk about the economics of the business. Sounds like from onset, you're making money and you're kind of growing as each location grows. Obviously, it sounds like Rogers was a massive hit. And so from a revenue perspective, where have y'all been? Where are y'all at? Sounds like employees, 120, and maybe just some growth rates of like, you've been open actual retail stores since 2018. I assume those growth rates, we talk about hyper businesses here in Northwest Arkansas. You're at the top of the list.
Yeah.
Any figures there?
Yeah. Let me do some math. So we 4X'd from 2016 to 2017. We 10X'd. Let's see. I'm trying to do that was 2018. So then, so we're 44X by 2019, 50X by 2020, Razorbacks in 2021. So we're 67X by 2021 from our first year.
Unbelievable.
And then 2022, we were business, stadium here, stadium Bentonville, and then opened Rogers in the fall of 2022. I think we did this number. Almost 100X in 2022 from day one. Let's just go with what we're going to finish this year, 283. Without giving exact.
Yeah. No.
But it's a lot.
Well, and I It's amazing. I know people are about to start flooding in here, so I want to make sure we're being respectful
it's already 10:30.
of what's going to come in.
So we're officially over the longest one now.
Yes,
probably an hour and a half.
yes, yeah, officially.
I actually said when I said that it was 55 minutes, I was like, no, now I want to be the record.
Yeah. And we're
No,
talking
but
about the podcast link, just so
we
everyone
got
knows.
we got 5 minutes for something in the front dining room.
Okay.
We're good.
But
Y'all take your time.
This is good.
I've got a meeting at 11.
Okay.
but as far as you're in retail now, you're in Walmart.
Yep.
Are you in any other?
We're in Harps.
Okay.
We're in Harps, and then we're selling online. I mean, we're trying. I mean, retail's hard. Retail's super hard. It's not easy.
Do you have a retail team here now, or what's that?
We've
look
got
like?
a broker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're doing great. But it's just hard to drive retail sales without, I don't know, incredible resources. I mean, you're going against massive
McCormick's,
brands.
yeah. I mean, that's all they do.
McCormick, Sweet Baby Ray's. You're just in a big old ocean of how do you become relevant on a retail scale. So
That's an ancillary part of your business.
For sure.
That's not something
We're not
Jordan
waking
Wright's
up
sitting here focused.
not cashing any checks in the retail business.
Okay.
That's for sure.
No, that's great. And then the other segment that we kind of hit on that I'd love to hear, and I think the most impressive thing for me about Wright's is every location I've eaten at, including the Razorback games, the quality is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I don't think people, maybe you do get enough credit for it, but I want to give you credit for it because you go to a wedding for 300 people. I've never left a wedding and said, man, I had an amazing meal. You're going to a Razorback game with 80,000 fans in the stadium, and you're getting a sandwich, and you're like, this tastes exactly like the sandwich that I got in Johnson.
Love
and so I don't know. I'm kind of blown away by that. I don't know how you do it.
Man, I'll tell you what, God has blessed our business beyond measure. Well, like I said, with the people that he's brought into our business, the relationships we've built with our team. And, for us, we're a servant leader driven model. And so we're always going to treat you better than it's like I try to tell people, it's like I kind of used to say, like, treat people better than you treat yourself, and I really do mean that because a lot of people treat themselves poorly. So you've got to be able to talk to yourself as a person, an entrepreneur. You've got to be able to talk to yourself the way God sees you, and you've got to be able to not talk to yourself like, why am I treating you like Jesus treats others, and I don't treat myself like Jesus treats me or treats others? And so it's like you've got to really work on that of treating yourself better. But it starts with coming from a healthy place of if I'm okay and I'm good, I want others to feel that. And I want others to feel great experiences and to be served. And so, it just all stems from that service model of how do we make people feel great to come here, and how do we do it? And so everyone's just totally aligned on making sure people's experiences are what they should be. So whether that's the stadium, and that's the thing about the stadium, and you could easily get away with buying prepared smoked brisket that you don't have to trim, you don't have to deal with all the waste, you don't have to cook it, you don't have to transport it. You could just, there's a product out there that Buc-ee's uses that one of the sales guys is trying to get us to buy for stadium. And I'm like, no. Like, why? Why would I not serve prime brisket at the stadium? Like, I could buy Select and chop it up, and people are like, stadium sandwiches, but then my stadium sales would suck. So it's like, it's all a matter of what is your purpose. Your purpose is to serve great food. Don't go try to serve bad food.
And people catch on, whether it's like, a month from then or 2 years from then, and whether there's that extra margin there for a little bit. It's like people catch on. What do you tell people when someone says Wright's is too expensive?
I think it's okay. Go somewhere else.
Yeah.
I'd say it's all a value proposition. So you buy what you value.
Yeah.
So I think if you value great food, you're going to think it's appropriately priced for the volume you get. And if you're a little cheaper on what you like to spend, you're going to always think you're shorted in everything in life. And so you probably think the Big Mac meal is a good deal at $10 just because it's less than everywhere else, even though it's like, okay, they're serving 2 ounces of finished meat and I'm serving you 8 ounces of finished cooked meat, yielded out, loss on that. It's crazy. I mean, we lose 50% of our brisket.
Wow.
Just in moisture loss and trim. So I can't charge you less.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reality. If I charge you less, we'd just be a nonprofit. So there is no point in business if there is no profit to be had and no profit to share and no profit to reinvest in your business so that your team has great equipment and your team believes that you care about their restaurant and the business that you run. If you run crappy restaurants and, this is an awesome old place and the nostalgia is great, but it's time for a reload and to update it. And so it needs it. And so, but that shows we care. We're not just, it'd be really easy to just ride this bucket for another 15 years and extract as much as we could as it continues to, and it's growing. The great thing is Johnson's growing. The Johnson's numbers growing, which is awesome for a 7-year mature business to continue to achieve growth without price increases. Yeah. The only thing we've raised is brisket price $1. We made some price increases about 2 years ago in 2022. But since Rogers opened, I mean, that's really the only thing we raised was the price of brisket.
Which is actually crazy because all the other price raises that everybody's doing. The fact that's crazy.
Well, and a lot of them are raising prices and then shrinking portions. So they're double hitting you. And so we've not changed portions. We've increased portions actually in each of our groupings. And that's some of the adjustments we made pricing wise. We're not taking, we're going to make it better, give you more. So we're not kind of it'll ease our operations a little bit to be able to just, we may charge a little more, but we're going to give more. So we're aligning that to make sure that the value's there. So
yeah,
it's good.
Well, and you talked about the remodel here. We've kind of talked about what things are going on currently. What's next?
There's a lot, and it's probably like my least favorite question, just because the options are almost mind-numbingly high. It's probably the biggest pain point I deal with on a day-to-day basis is pondering that question and thinking, what is the next 20 years? What is the next 5? And so we really have to we're really aligned on looking for the right deals to grow. We don't have any outside investors. I'm 100% owner. And so I can do what I want. I don't answer to anybody but my wife and the Lord. So it's like, if I wanted to go take on investors and get to 100 locations, like most definitely could pursue that path. It's like, do I want that? What's the cost to my family? What's the cost to my life and my freedom to go enjoy a round of golf if I want to, or go on a vacation and take time to, or coach my kids' sports. I've got a limited time with my family, and so I think it's one of those things that we'll continue to pursue opportunities that make financial sense, and if we have the leadership structure in place like we do, and have identified future leaders that can go launch, and we're going into Walmart headquarters, and then we're just gonna kind of rock and roll.
That's awesome. I know a lot of people are gonna be excited about that.
Yeah.
And so 2 wrap-up questions here. Number 1, how do you define success?
Man, I define success as becoming more like Christ. Every day doing putting that visual of what is success. And you can look at these different people of achievers. I watched a guy talk about visualizing, manifesting your own success. And it was like, man, none of that crap matters if we're not daily pursuing a relationship with the Lord and putting the image of Christ in front of us and saying, okay, this is who success is. This is what a successful life is. These are leaders in my life that have lived that way. Hebrews 13:7 says, look to those who who shared the gospel with you, who shared the good news of the Lord, consider the outcome of their life and imitate their faith. And it's like when you can live a life that does that, and when we all make mistakes, we all have pasts, and we all have things that are in our shadow that people would be like, oh, yeah. It's like, no, man, that stuff doesn't matter because God's forgiven us. If we have faith in Christ, like we've got to be the hands and feet of Jesus into our communities and into the business places. And that's success to me and like raising a family that's healthy, that has a healthy relationship with the Lord and each other without a distorted view of the church and without a distorted view of the planet. It's like, I want people to see good, and I want our family to see good in others and to treat others better than they deserve to be treated and put others first. And so if we can love God and love others, then that's success. And I mean, the business side and stuff is just, I could go work at Dollar General and it'd be fine. Like I'd just work a job, but I'm doing it with excellence because this is what I've seen great men of faith do. It's just put God first, put others right before you, and live like that. So that's success to me.
Wow.
So good.
And then kind of lastly here, we're Northwest Arkansas focused podcast. Like this is, NWA Founders. So, I think you've kind of answered, this is your Northwest Arkansas story, but what's your vision for Northwest Arkansas from your perspective? What's your vision for the area?
We need more everything. We need more restaurants. We need more people. We need more infrastructure. We need I-49 to get expanded, and we need more internal city infrastructure, better roads, continue to invest in schools. And I mean, you've got to be thinking 50 years, down the road, and you've got to be building this place to become a Dallas, or it's going to stay where it is. And I think Rogers is doing a great job. I think Fayetteville needs to step it up when it comes to attracting businesses and being a business friendly environment. Springdale's doing a great job. Bentonville's doing obviously incredible. I think Fayetteville, with the opportunities and the university and the brand power that they have, we got to step it up on the business and economy front. I mean, we have to be getting more offices down here, which obviously the attraction is up there, but it's like, what can we offer some of these businesses to be like, hey, invest in Fayetteville, because Fayetteville has its uniqueness, but like, man, there's so much opportunity to adjust and kind of influence how the economic growth of Fayetteville happens. And it's going to go west, but you got to really strengthen the middle of the city. College needs to be redone. We got to get strip clubs off 71 Business. I mean, stuff like that just like, you don't see that in Bentonville, Springdale. It's like, is you're driving, you got a church across the street, you got a strip club across the street, and it's like, what are we doing? Like, who's planning this? And so it's like, you really need to work with business leaders and real estate to be like, hey, let's develop these zones where we have retail and restaurants and we're attracting these places instead of just putting, we've got Fayetteville Tacos and Tamale tucked away in this tiny corner. And I'm sure it's doing okay, but it's like, man, it's not what Bentonville Tacos is doing. It's not doing what Local Lime's doing in Rogers. I know that. Mm-hmm. So, there's some big opportunities for Fayetteville to increase its economic prowess.
That's good. Well, thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for the time, Jordan. I think at the end, we love to just share what we learned from you. And I think one of the biggest things that stuck out that you said is our trophy is our customer.
Yeah.
And I think that's an awesome quote. We're going to put your name behind it.
Yeah, I love it.
Because I think anytime we've come here, we get asked the question, and you get asked the question at other restaurants, how is the food? But typically it's before you even take a bite of it. It's like something that a server goes through and train, like, how's your food?
Yep.
And when people ask here, they actually want to know your answer to the question.
Yeah.
So you've instilled that in your people. Now your leadership team's instilling that in people. And I think that quote is really when people say what makes Wright special, that's it, is you really care about the customer experience. And that goes into the second thing, which is just your persistence. Cameron kind of talked about it a little bit, but you planted your flag in BBQ, and you also planted your flag in Johnson before those two things were commonplace in Arkansas. And so that took a level of persistence, working through multiple food trucks, weather impacting different types of events and stuff like that. You just kept going and you kept going. And that's what we've seen through some of the founders, that almost all the founders that we met have this high level of persistence. Sure. And so no doubt that you have that. And I think the last piece is just quality is what you care about in everything. And you just heard it in the way that you define success. There's a quality aspect there. The way that you want to lead your family, there's a high quality that you want to do that with. The way that you're growing your business and you're picking great people. And Cameron asked the question of, hey, Wright's is expensive. Well, it's expensive because you're trying to hire really good people and serve really good food, right? And so the quality, I mean, you're obsessed. You're a product guy. You're obsessed with the product. And that product is an outcome of the people and the wood. We've watched 3 trucks of wood get delivered this morning. So just really awesome to spend time with you, and so encouraged by the growth of this business. But then also one thing we didn't talk about is what you've done in the community and the food that you've served out of your generosity. I mean, my wife's grandpa passed away a couple years ago, and you catered the funeral, and you did it out of pocket. And so we're just, the way that you're investing in the community, I think those are the businesses that we selfishly, we want to highlight what you're doing, because we talk about Northwest Arkansas, you guys, you business owners, you guys and ladies, y'all are what are making our area a special place to live. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Jordan Wright, thanks for being here today. How can people find you or get in touch with you?
Yeah, wrightsbarbecue.com.
There we go.
You heard it. Barbecue on Instagram.
Awesome.
You heard it here. Well, thanks, Jordan.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks, guys.